Okay, hello everybody, it's Matt. Um, this video is to replace a little bit of the class time lost on Thursday. I was home with both my older kids, although really because of my 3-year-old who had a high fever. Um, they're both feeling better now, thankfully. Uh, my goal with this video is to introduce the next unit so we can get moving on Tuesday. On Tuesday, what we'll do is we will start with what I was meaning to do Thursday, which is um, talk about the cut paper illustration. Thank you all for bringing them to class on Thursday, even though I wasn't there. We'll talk about those briefly, then we'll move in to doing some painting for the value unit. So what I'll be doing right now is just talking about what the next 2 weeks of class are going to be and showing some images related to value. So I'm going to get to these images in a minute. I want to start off by looking at the overall handout. So looking at in assignments, Unit 3, value. The image of the header is the Italian artist Giorgio Morandi. I chose this image because it has really specific value shapes. That's how I would describe this image. You could name them. Let's say number 1 is white, number 2 is light gray, number 3 is dark gray, number 4 is black or near black. Okay, so it's very specific, and this is kind of how this is the painting in this project is going to be like this. I'm going to want you to use very specific value shapes. Topics, value scale. What is a value scale? What is high key versus low key? What is value contrast? What is a value pattern? Very briefly, high key versus low key would be high contrast, low contrast, high contrast, low contrast. Value contrast hopefully is clear to you. Whether there's a lot of contrast would be you go from very dark darks to very light lights. Low contrast would be less difference between the brightest light and the darkest dark. The value pattern or value structure is how light and shadow is shown in an image in its most basic way. The way I'm going to do this project in terms of like the work I'm asking from you and the way that I hope you're going to learn in this unit is through 3 different assignments. The first 2 are pretty brief, and then the third is a little bit longer. So the first part is value scales, and that's the image on Blackboard, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. 5 equal steps from black to white. You're basically just mixing paint from black to white and trying to do your best to get gradually through the different tones. It looks pretty easy. It is somewhat challenging to get them equally spaced, and it's a good learning experience. The 9 is more challenging to get them evenly spaced, and I think it'll hopefully will teach you a lot about kind of relative value and paint mixing at its most basic. The next part is called 1 is 2, 2 is 1. That's also up on Blackboard. And it's the exercise is about understanding how one value responds when it's next to another, or what I would call relative value. Let me go back to that image just to help explain these 2 parts here of the assignment, of the unit. So let me see, go back to the announcements. Hopefully the website is going to cooperate with me right now, and it's not. Wait, come on. You can skip ahead, skip the pause. Let's see if I should just try to use the back button maybe. Well, super frustrating. I'll come back to this in a minute maybe, or I can see if it's on my laptop. 1 as 2, no. Oh. Well, I don't want to lose time and have to restart this screen capture video. So, um, oh, here we go. Yes. It's loading. It's loading. Okay, great. So, here is the simple of value scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. This is the palette that you're going to be using for the painting. That is the last part of the unit. And this is the 9-step value scale. So mixing from white to black. You know, if you're painting, if your value scales look like this, they will be excellent. The other one is, this is 1 is 2. Wait, sorry. 1 is 2, 2 is 1. Okay, and what is happening here is here, hopefully you agree with me here, that this appears to be light gray and this appears to be medium gray or dark gray. Whereas, and they are the same exact color or same value tone. Okay, and this is something that you'll see when you do this. It's not that difficult. You just have to do a black background and a light gray background to make it work. Same thing here. Here you do a black background, light gray background, but then you use 2 different tones or 2 different colors of gray. One is a darker gray, and then because that dark gray is contrasting with the black, it appears lighter. And because the light gray is contrasting with the light gray, with the even lighter gray near white, it appears darker. And now these appear the same. Okay, so it's a kind of a fun trick, and hopefully through the process of doing it, you'll learn a little bit about relative value. So basically what one color or one tone looks like next to another can shift. All right, so going back to the handout, the value shape portrait is the larger assignment with this unit. It's a 5-tone value scale, specific value shapes, and you're going to be working on a portrait. Now, this does not have to be a picture, a selfie, or a picture of a friend. It can be more broadly interpreted. I've had people do animals or a still life, you know, a couple of items, something that is representative of a person or a place. We're going to be using the green Bristol pads that you may have seen in the classroom and the same paint as the value scales and the 1 as 2, 2 as 1. You can do this freehand, or you can follow a similar process with the cut paper, where we do a mock-up in Photoshop, and then we translate that to the paper. Okay, so in some ways, you could think about this as the next step after the cut paper. Instead of just having 2 tones, black and white, with the cut paper, we have 5 tones now. But a similar kind of process of simplification will happen, just not as much as with the cut paper. See the calendar? This is what's happening right now, the introduction. Tuesday's class, it's a little bit of an odd class because of Founders Day. I'm going to be hustling to get to Winona for 9:20, but that's fine. And we will be working on the value gradations. And the 1 is 2, 2 is 1. I want you to start thinking about the picture that you are going to choose for the portrait. I'll look for some examples to share with you. Basically, Tuesday and Thursday will be work days on the unit, mostly on the beginning parts of it. Then over the weekend and the next week, you will be focusing on the portrait. It's going to be due the week after on Tuesday, March 26th. And then we move into a unit on color, where we'll be working, not to get too ahead of myself, but if you're curious, the color unit is going to be all about learning about different color schemes. So what is complementary color? What is a color triad? What is monochromatic? What do those things look like? And how to make interesting compositions with different colors. Okay, included a grading rubric. The value portrait has more points involved. The value scales have a little bit less, but it's still important. So please email me questions or just bring questions to class. on Tuesday. Now, don't end the video though. I want to show you some value images still. So I'm going to go into announcements, rather homepage. Go to course materials and presentation on value. Actually, I'm just going to open up. I have it already open on my computer and made the correct size. So, images from art and design about value. The simple value gradation, I already talked about this. Consistent steps from black to white. Here is some basic vocabulary when it comes to value. Things that you should know, especially when we work on the value portrait. Highlight is the brightest part. The core shadow is usually the darkest, if not the cast shadow. So the core shadow is the darkest part of an object, and then the cast shadow is the shadow that is cast directly below it, where the object blocks the light. Half tone is in between the highlight and the core shadow. And then often something that is missed, except maybe if you have taken a drawing class before, or if you've taken photography in high school, maybe if you've noticed reflected light, or you're just a perceptive person, but often objects do have a light that gets reflected back onto them. So the core shadow kind of ends on a lot of objects, but as you get closer to the edge of the object and like a tabletop, or even you could see this in architecture, there is often reflected light coming back from the ground. An example I love showing when I talk about value is the artist Georges Seurat, who is more well known for his pointillist, colorful paintings. Um, his painting of the Paris, um, I'm blanking on the name. It's called La Grande Jatte. It's a scene on the Seine in Paris in the late 19th century. It's one of the most famous paintings at the Chicago Art Institute. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. This is totally different. And why I find this so instructive in terms of value is that there is absolutely no line used. So the only way edges are shown is through shifts in value. So the only way we can tell this is a nose or an arm or fingers is not the closest thing we get to a line are these dark shapes in between the fingers. And I find that really helpful to see in terms of the fact that a drawing or a painting can be made only with value without any line being used. Here's a really different painting. I just thought I'd contrast the two. Here, value is not used in a naturalistic or realistic way. This is a famous anti-war painting by Pablo Picasso called Guernica. Maybe there's some realism in that there's a light bulb shining, but value is really used to create structure and pattern here. It's not for naturalism. Here we have a technique called hatching that hopefully you're familiar with that idea. This is an etching, it's a print by the Spanish artist Goya. So lines are used together to make value. So the density of the line, denser lines are darker, less dense lines are lighter. Similar kind of thing here by the American artist Keith Kollwitz. What I find instructive here is that there are really only 2 or 3 value tones here, black, white, and gray. Yet there's so much shown. It's so three-dimensional looking. Another image by the same artist with a similar focus on simple value shapes. You can do a lot with a couple simple value shapes. Not much line. Line is used here as hatching, not as outline. This is the image from the header of the unit handout. Again, clear value shapes. Here we have low key and high key color, so very high contrast, low contrast. Here we have a wide value range. This is a photograph by the American artist Mark Rudell, and it shows an abandoned early railway. And I find it visually really exciting because of the wide range of grays. So there's so many steps between black and white. This is not a 3, 4, 5 tone value. This is a 20, 30. There are so many grays here. Similar, same artist, and a drawing by the American artist V.S. Selmans. Much more subtle, but also has a wide value range, even though we don't get into very dark darks here. I decided to include this image. It's a little unusual compared to these others in terms of how value is used, but it is a broadsheet, early New York Times, and what you see here is the denser areas of words are darker, and so there is a kind of structure that is created by value here, even though there's no shading. Here, if we were in class, I'd be asking you what's happening here, but I think it's pretty clear how value is used to create structure. What's happening is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas that are lighter, and that is the focus. So instead of using bold print, here the title is lightened and it contrasts from a dark background. Similar thing going on here with the white offset text. I find this kind of clever with the different layers of text in the image. Here, take a minute to look at this image. You may not be sure of what exactly I'm getting at here. Here's a map of New York City, actually the New Jersey and New York. So this is showing the Lincoln Tunnel in between New Jersey and New York. And this is a schedule. So this is like a Port Authority bus schedule for a route between New Jersey and New York. And what I think is so interesting here is how value is used. So the density of lines during rush hour on weekdays, it's quite dense here. So we can tell that there are more, at a quick glance, let's say we are a commuter, we can see, oh, well, they offer a lot more trips in rush hour, especially around 8 a.m. In the afternoon, it's more spread out. Whereas on Saturdays, look, it's continuous throughout the whole day, more or less. And same thing on Sundays, except it falls off in the early hours. So I find it, excuse me, really interesting how visually the simple shifts in value tell us a lot of information quickly in this infographic. Here, value is used in a more emotional way to give a sense that this shoe is flying or filled with energy, filled with potential. A poster for a play, high key value, just really, really clear design. I thought this was a good example of why high contrast can be eye-catching. Here, value is used in a kind of emotional way, and I guess I was grouping these together too because of the stark feel of this gives it a kind of emotional quality to it that's very different than this, or this, which has a kind of a magical quality. So this is a work of architecture, and the light comes in through all these little openings to give it a feeling, maybe give us a feeling of wonder or something that is coming within. This is a performing arts space, so multiple parts coming together to make a whole. Here is some related image. This is a famous work of architecture from the early 20th century. It's a modern church where instead of stained glass, there are all these small windows that open up into the space with colored light. A similar use of light in an emotional, or I guess in this case, spiritual way, rather than just as a simple kind of design structure. A couple more images. Here, reverse value is used. These are getting a little eclectic. I want to grab a couple more images to show you different aspects of value. So this is opposite. So here's chalk on chalkboard. The drawing is made with white material on the black background, and so it's the opposite of what we would typically see. Here, value is a narrative element. So the light is almost like an actor. We can't see the opening of the stove, but we can see how the light is shining into the room. Very different example of light as an actor, but this is an Old Testament scene painted by the famous Dutch painter Rembrandt. And so here the light is again an actor. It's like the voice of God in the room. Here, I wanted to pull out an unusual example, kind of like the Picasso example at the beginning of these images, where also I included again at the end, where the light is not used for realism to show light coming from the sun or from a light source, but it is used to provide structure and a sense of pattern. So this is a nearly abstract artwork, although I guess you can see trees and letters. The way light and shadow are used is maybe in some ways to make the trees look a little realistic, but it's really this black and white pattern that just provides structure for us and visual enjoyment for us to engage with this artwork. Same thing here with this Picasso painting. So, fairly short presentation on various approaches in art and design to value. And that is really it. I will see you all on Tuesday in class. Let me just check on, I'm thinking about if I'm missing anything. If I'm missing something, I can just cover it on Tuesday. I look forward to seeing you all and to talking about the great cut paper illustrations, and then starting some painting.